welcome back to another episode of Actually, You Can. I'm your host, Myth, and I have the pleasure of welcoming Emma Brown, a passionate in-person and online coach in the fitness industry, to today's show. Emma isn't your typical personal trainer. Her mission is to inspire and guide others to get back to basics and back to themselves. Her mechanisms for doing this are through movement and supportive wellness practices. In this episode, Emma shares her experience and insights on how you can foster a nurturing relationship with exercise and ultimately create unique wellness habits that feel authentic and aligned. Prepare to challenge your perceptions of health and fitness and allow yourself to use these as tools to embark on a transformative journey to become your most authentic self. Because remember, actually, you can. Hi, Emma. Welcome to the show. It's so wonderful to have you here today.
Hello, Miff. It's very nice to be here with you and everyone.
And so today we're going to be talking specifically about health, and I'm so looking forward to hearing your perspective on this. But before we dive deep into it, I'm curious, people will hear a bit of an accent in your voice. Where is your accent from?
I am from the north of England, a place called Carlisle. Very working class vibes. Moved here 15 years ago. I mean, to other people in the north of England, it's not Australian. So, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, literally.
How good.
Mm.
And so what brought you to Australia?
So I moved to Australia in 2009. I actually came just traveling and I met somebody when I arrived. And then the rest was history. We ended up staying together. I ended up getting citizenship here. And by the time we separated, I'd already established a life here, I suppose. So I ended up just hanging around and loitering on various areas of the country.
You got sucked in. And so when you got here 15 years ago, what were you doing? What did life look like for you?
Well, I left a job in hospitality. So I was regional managing over there in nightclubs, really fun, where I'd get up at, 11 and go to bed at 4 a.m. And then when I arrived here, there was a reason why I left that job, obviously. I had enough of that lifestyle. And I moved here looking for change. When you're kind of a bit younger, you're always kind of searching for different things. And I ended up moving countries, to kind of try and find what I wanted to do. And I moved into retail, actually, when I arrived. So similar in terms of like customer facing, and then kind of worked up to management in that, and lived in the inner west and just hung out, friends, trained, worked, traveled a lot around Australia. Yeah, really good.
And so the 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. lifestyle is so different to the Emma that I know today. Tell me about how you made this shift and what the transition looks like to what you do today. And before we jump into that, what do you do today?
All right, today. So my job now is I am an online and in-person coach. So, mainly focusing on movement, but using that really as a gateway or an access point into self-awareness. So, allowing people to understand themselves and their bodies. I think movement is a really good access point for people who are intrigued or curious about getting to know themselves more and not sure where to start. So I generally will meet people where they are with that, and we will go on a bit of an adventure together and end up exploring lots of different realms of the body and mind and spirituality and things like that. And it tends to, get pretty exciting for people and me. I find it really great to help people on that journey because it's similar to mine. So it's very easy for me to connect with people in that way. So that's what I do now.
And so it sounds like there was quite a journey to get to where you are today. What has been that journey?
Yeah.
Let's talk through that.
Very much so. So when I was in nightclubs, I was doing the late nights, early mornings. Now going to bed early. Now I'm getting up early and going to bed early. Very, very different. And it's funny because people in Australia only know me as this version of me. And it's like, there's so much more on the other side. And, I'll often have conversations and I don't actively talk about myself unless I'm asked questions. So then people I'll know for years will ask me a question and I'm like, oh yeah, I was married for like 7 years. And they're like, what? And that's kind of like my life before I was doing this. So it's very the polarity is quite extreme. But I think, that was part of my journey to this, because I wasn't happy then. I was not. I always was one of these people, and I know lots of people that are listening to this, Mish, and maybe you as well, was always one of those people who was like, is this it? Is this actually it? Because I feel like something's really missing here. I'm missing something that other people seem to have. And I would find, confident people and women really triggering for me because I didn't understand why someone was so happy. Because I'm like, why don't I have that? Without the understanding that actually that was me living in a world of patterns and subconscious things. And yeah, moving over here and starting moving actually was that kind of that starting point of me being like, oh, there is something else going on. And it's just so basic, just understanding how my body moved helped me become more curious about how my mind worked and trying to understand my emotionality. Like I'm a very, very emotional person. And I actually move through my life and decisions via my emotions. And those used to terrify me. And they're still really quite overwhelming, but like I understand them and I can navigate my life through them and listen to them and listen to my body. And, lots of stuff happened. And, there was a couple of moments where, yeah, there was just those times where you're like, wow, you're kind of in a pain spot where, unfortunately for me, that's what happened. It wasn't necessarily a conscious choice, which I'd have preferred. But there was a moment a few years ago that just kind of pushed me off a cliff and off I went to like autonomy, self-reliance, not being dependent on other people, no codependency, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's mine. And I think from where I'm at now, it's it's almost like I don't recognize that person that I was, although I'm very grateful for her. But I think the tools that I've gathered and now have, are just becoming very useful for other people really without me even noticing or realizing. So yeah, that's how I got there.
And it's interesting you mentioned that it's almost like you had another life back in the UK. And I think it's really interesting. I say that the quickest way to make a significant life shift is to change your environment and you
Mm,
change country. And it sounds like exactly that what
definitely.
you did. It's just like, it sounds like from what you've shared that you weren't happy with the current situation, like things are going to change. Let's just uproot and move environments. And
Mm,
it sounded like you started using the new environment as an opportunity to recreate yourself. And you mentioned that you fell into movement and you found movement. What sort of movement were you doing and how did you start to recognize like, hey, this is a really useful tool for me right now?
yeah, good one. Well, another fun fact that lots of people don't know about me is when I was at uni, I did contemporary and classical ballet as a
No way.
degree. Yes. Yeah, there we go. I
How
know it's just
cool.
like, there's so many little pockets of like randomness in my life. It's wild. But yeah, I did. I did it. And, I'm someone who I'm not a studier. I dropped out of high school. I dropped out of uni. I was never comfortable in that environment or feeling controlled or feeling like being told what to do. Very much not comfortable in that space. And doing dance, I thought, and anyone else who's listening will probably agree with me that it's an expression, right? So it's like I went in there thinking I'm going to be able to learn how to express what's going on for me or like, be creative. And it wasn't like that. It was very robotic, very like techniques. And I just didn't like it. It ruined it for me. So I had that love for movement always, but that took it away from me momentarily. And then when I moved here, I actually started CrossFit. That's how I began my fitness journey again. It was through CrossFit and the community that gave and, like, yeah, the type of people that were doing that sport at the time. And this would have been maybe 10 years ago. Yeah, they were just really fun and inspiring. And it was, I think I started for probably the similar reasons as most of us do, particularly women, was how I looked. And, you know, I was comparing myself to people a lot. But once I transcended that and really started to notice more intrinsic benefits of why I was moving, that went. And I moved away from CrossFit and I started actually doing things that suited my body.
And so what's your relationship with movement like now? Why do you move?
So many reasons. I think we are meant to move. I just think, you know, we've got all these muscles and tendons and ligaments, and everything is, designed the way it's meant to be. And I honestly think moving to me is just such a great way to look after your body and nurture it. Like, it's a living organism, and if I can nurture that in some way, the relationship I have now is not about exercising, and it's not about just thrashing myself and getting a PB. And it's more about, like, how can I really maximize this amazing asset that's supporting me in so many ways. Because as soon as I'm in that space, and I know when I'm not, if I'm doing training that's not working for me, I feel it everywhere. And I don't show up in the same way. But if I'm doing something that's really congruent with, like, who I am and where I'm at, which still is like lifting heavy, it's still training really, really hard, but it's much more structured and balanced. Um, I feel nurtured, and I feel like my body is very thankful, and it shows me. My skin's not like better. My body's leaner. I feel regulated and calm. I feel like I can remember words easier. I sleep better. My food choices are better. I mean, that it's just goes on and on. I think everyone knows all of these. It's just a case of really getting into it to see it and feel it and know it.
And you touched on a
Mm.
few of, I guess, the symptoms there. And I know you're a really strong advocate for good health. And so I'm interested to hear a bit more about your approach to health. I guess health can be a really umbrella term. What sort of areas fall under that
Mhm.
umbrella to you in terms of health?
Health to me, I have such a weird relationship with the word health. I don't know why. I don't particularly I don't know why, but health to me is physical, as like a foundation, and then it's emotional to me, and it's also mental. If those three aren't congruent with each other, you're not gonna feel healthy. It's just simple. You might look really jacked, but we all know, like, we've all been that. Well, I've been that person where I look amazing, but inside I'm like just so unhappy. So I think they all really need to align with each other. And to me, that comes from training, yes, but also, like, doing a lot of um doing a lot of stuff for yourself, like a lot of self-care things, and, you know, taking the time to just look after yourself without guilt and without feeling like you've got to be something and you've got to be the best at this and you've got to be amazing at that. It's like, actually, let's be honest, right? If I'm really, really honest with myself, what makes me feel good? Like, one of my clients of the day, as an example, she's trained her whole life. She's trained since she was 16, and she's made that part of her identity unconsciously, to the point where if she stopped, she's terrified of what other people might think. And she said to me, she's like, I actually don't love training. She's like, I don't, and I'm doing it every day, twice a day, because I feel like that's who I am. So we're just transitioning her out of that, because it's like, well, you don't need to do that though. You can train 3 times a week. You're still going to get, we can make your sessions that good that you only need 3 sessions a week. You're going to feel better. You're going to look better. You're going to feel more authentic in what you're doing. And in turn, her mental health will improve and her emotional health will improve, because she's not going to be so dysregulated and stressed internally. And she'll be able to observe more of what's going on because she's going to be calmer. And it's like, wow, she was just like, yeah, like, that's crazy. So yeah, I think me for health for me is, it's really connecting all three of them and understanding that one without the other two is not healthy. Your body's not working as a unit if one of those is off, in my opinion. And you'll notice that in your digestion, in your sleep, in your concentration, in your focus, in your cravings, in your PMS symptoms. It'll come through somehow. And that's what I think.
And it's so interesting here you mentioned that client, because I see it all too often in the gym space too. You get the people who train every day, 7 days a week, and that's fine and it's really supportive. That's just what they love to do. And then you get
Yeah.
other people who come to the
Yeah.
gym every day because it's a chore, or you get people who
Yes.
do 2 sessions a day because they think they have to lose weight and do all that sort of stuff. And so
Exactly.
it's like anything, right? Like, exercise can be a really wonderful tool and supportive tool for your health, but it can also be destructive if you're using it in a way that's not supportive of that. And so I'm interested to hear, like,
Correct.
what sort of conversations were you having with that client to help her recognize, like, you think you're doing the good things by
Mm,
exercising this much and you're as part of your
mm.
identity. And she needs to obviously uphold that. But what did the conversations look like in trying to, I guess, expand her awareness to the other elements of health that you've described, the emotional and mental side of things? Because it's often really hard to explain, right? Like if
Yes,
you
it is.
have ill physical health, you can generally see it. Or if you have a broken arm, you can see that sort of
Correct.
stuff. It's the internal
Mm.
stuff that's a lot harder to bring awareness to. I'd love to hear more
It
about
it
that.
really is. Yeah, no, you're so right, and I mean, that's like, it's the ever asking question, isn't it? We all wanna know that question. How do we understand that? Because we've been so untaught how to be a human being via society that we actually completely disconnected from just the very, very basics of, like, living as as a body. And with this client in particular, obviously she's come on board with me understanding, like, my values and ethos as a coach. So, like, there's already that semi understanding and curiosity. However, there wasn't the link hadn't quite clicked. So the conversations that we were having generally would be around stress. So um this chick was very stressed all the time, and she didn't know she was stressed because the symptoms aren't what we class as stress, which is like, oh God, I feel stressed. I feel stressed. You know, it's very, it's high heart rate and it's you're hot and you're this and you're that. This was more, her body was giving up on her. So she would just have injury after injury after injury. She'd often have emotional breakdowns, where she would, just be something would just be said and it would just completely like, she'd have a complete visceral response to something, and it was not she was not able to calm herself down. It was very out of control. So it was coming through in that. It was also coming through in digestion. So she was constantly bloated, pains, PMS symptoms often. So a lot of pain in her belly, like she saw boobs all the time. And also in her skin. So she'd get like eczema, which is 90% of the time is usually caused by stress. So she'd get eczema around her eyes. So the thing is, with these symptoms, the way that we live our life now, and given like how we've been brought up and educated through various different ways, we often look at those symptoms and think that's the problem. The eczema is the problem, right? And then obviously she's been doing that for years. She's been band-aiding these different things separately, as opposed to actually looking at like what was going on underneath. So we just started talking about, um, like just talking about her childhood really, and what happened and what was going on, and things that bother her. And she had big issues with control and stuff like that. And we ended up just like being like, oh my God, like together. We were like, shit, that's what it is. And then just introduced some practices, meditation, walking meditations, listening to music. And over time, it's settled down. It's good because to me, stress to me is the precursor of pretty much all most illness to me, in my opinion. I don't think we know how to regulate it. I don't think we know how to manage it. I don't think we understand it enough. But I think everything else that comes out is symptoms of undiagnosed or chronic stress. And that was in the case of this particular client. Yeah, wild.
And thank you for sharing all that. It's incredible, right? Like
Mm.
spoken to a number of incredible guests on this show, and the themes of stress and just past experiences and how they manifest in so many different ways, so many unsuspecting ways. I feel like there's too
Yeah.
much evidence to ignore, like our past experiences and all the physical symptoms we get. There are underlying issues that we might not have put voice to or actually brought awareness to before. And just simply doing
Mm,
that can be so incredibly healing sometimes as well. And um, just one quick thing you mentioned that you believe that stress is the cause of many illnesses. And I agree. And I get challenged sometimes because we also need stress to grow. And so
yeah.
something that I hear often is in the gym space as well is people think they're overtraining. And I mean, yes, I think you can overtrain, but I think you're overtraining if potentially you're under recovering as well. And so I'm interested to hear your view on the balance of stress to grow and develop, which a lot of
Mm,
high achievers want to do. They're constantly pushing themselves, wanting to
mm,
grow. It's what
mm.
fuels us. And
Yeah.
so how do you balance that with the need to recover as well?
Yeah, good question. Definitely with the overtraining. I think I have a similar opinion to you with the overtraining. I mean, obviously, depending on this person, is training age and the context of that human being. But I think, yes, I think it's a lot of under recovery, under fueling, like not eating enough food, but that's the amount of volume that they're putting out of the body. Generally will cause the overtraining. And then obviously that leads to stress in the body. The stress then will continue to develop. But that to me is, it's unconscious stress. So there's not a lot of awareness around what's going on there. Whereas if, someone who's been training for 10 plus years, they understand controlled stress. They understand that they can push themselves to a certain level and then they know when to stop, pull back, regulate, and then reintroduce it again, which is that's exactly what I do with my clients. Like my conditioning sessions with clients are very mindful. It's like you're going to move at this pace for a minute. You're going to come off, and you're going to consciously regulate your body, so your body understands the difference between stress and rest and digest, and that's their session. So then in real life, when that happens, they understand like how to move between those two different systems. If you don't have that awareness, of course, it's just it's gonna manifest in sinister ways. I think it has to.
And
It just gets out of
yeah,
control.
and that makes complete sense. And I love again that you're using movement as such a valuable tool. And you've spoken previously to your history with movement. I'm interested to hear what your journey has been like, including those elements of emotional and mental in there as well. How did you start to play around with that and start to introduce that with your clients?
I think it was just so organic. I guess the clients I was attracting were similar to the friends that I was attracting at that time. They've got a level of self-awareness there, or there's a curiosity there, and they don't understand it. How do I navigate this? Because I'm now understanding that this doesn't work for me anymore. This actually makes me feel a certain way, or my priorities have shifted and this doesn't work anymore. And now I've got a child and I'm looking at my life in a totally different way. And I'm looking at my body in a much more nurturing way. And I want to really look after this thing. Generally, I would attract clients like that who then my clients, my business is very much revolved around the relationship that I have with people. It's a relationship essentially. So it's conversations, it's just having conversations, and then me generally talking to them about something that's came up for them, me being able to just completely relate via something that's happened with me that's similar, and then it just unfolds like that. It's fascinating, and obviously it's different for everyone. Everyone's moving at different paces, but um, yeah, that's how it kind of came in. And then I started to kind of really analyze my business because I'm moving it online now, like completely. I'm in the process of doing it. And obviously, when you do stuff like that, you've really got to look at the business model and be like, well, what is the product? What is the service? What is my message? Who's my avatar, etc. And I was like, oh, I'm not just like I do a lot of other things with these people, and talking to my clients as well and getting feedback from them. It was very consistently saying the same thing, like, you've helped me like love my body, you've made me stronger, you've helped me have a better relationship with myself, you've helped me stress less, you've helped me manage my days better, or have more energy. My hormones are better. And it was all very much around that. And to me, I was doing that effortlessly. So now I'm just doing that with intention.
What do you think is one of the most proudest moments you've had as a coach?
Oh, gosh, there's a few that pop to mind. There's a few.
I mean, if you don't have favorites, you can have a few. I find it
Yeah.
hard to have favorites too.
So you just pop. I was thinking yesterday about them, but, um, there's actually been a couple of girls which is so weird that you asked this, because I was looking last night through messages from people who, um, like previous clients. And there's a couple of messages in there. I was like, wow. And I screenshotted them because I was like, I should be really screenshotting these for those days when you just like, having a lot of self-doubt and like imposter syndrome and all that. And so I started like creating this little folder. And I would say at least 5 or 6 people had sent me a message just basically saying that that their life has completely changed because of me being in it. I was like, oh my God, that's huge. That was huge for me because I that felt to me like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. This is my job because that is what I want to feel. Like I want to feel of value to other people. That makes me feel fulfilled, you know. So that's one of them. And like, you know, in the gym floor, obviously my main tool is still going to be movement and training. Like I love it. I absolutely love it. I do it every day. It's my favorite thing. And there's been some great times when someone just gets a PB who's just been, you know, then I'm like, yes, you deserve
Yeah.
that. It's just especially not to discount men in any way, but like when it's women and they just came in and they're like kind of nervous at the beginning and then you see them just evolve into this absolute weapon. And you're
Oh,
just like,
love it so
and they're
much.
surrounded by women who are just like, yes, you know, great. Like that they get their first chin up. I'm like, still, I just love that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Makes you emotional, right? Like,
it does. It does make, yeah, like, wow. Cause you know, as I know how hard it is to do that. It's tough. Yeah. So there's been a few like that as well.
and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. I remember speaking with a previous guest and I tried this suggestion on myself and I was like,
Yeah.
maybe it's true. But he was saying that he feels his sort of clientele are in a bracket that are probably like 5 years younger than him or sort of going through what he's currently going through. What would you say about your current clients? How do you relate to them?
Um, oh God, this is great because, my client base is varied. Like I have clients older than me and I have clients younger than me. But generally I relate with people younger than me in general. Like my friends are younger than me, my partner's younger than me, most of my clients are younger than me. Like I just seem to gravitate towards that younger demographic. So it's perfect because what they're going through now, I've already been through.
Mm.
So it is kind of nice. But I do have clients who are older than me as well. But they're on a similar trajectory to the younger people, just different timelines. But generally they're in the same place, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah,
Mm,
it's same place, just maybe different timeline on
just
everyone's
different
unique
timeline.
journey, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And
That's it.
and you mentioned that you had messages of people saying how much you've changed their life, and that's so beautiful to hear. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering, did you ever have anyone in your life who you would say similar about? Was there any one person in your life who completely changed it for you?
Yeah, there is my life coach actually, who's now my best friend.
Mm.
He who's actually just left today. So I've had a meltdown already this morning because he's moved back to the UK today. Yeah, he's just been absolutely pivotal for me. I just it's definitely one of those moments that like, yes, I would have got here eventually, but I would not have got here this quickly without him. He really yeah, he really just was uh, yeah, amazing for me. So yeah, and he's gone, but definitely have that one person, and he's still going. He's life coaching people like easy peasy.
And his legacy lives on within you and the impact. And I think it's really beautiful to hear you say
Oh,
that as well, because
huge.
advice of again every other guest I've had on this podcast, the really actionable step a lot of them come up with is hire a coach. And I can't stress it enough is you need someone
So
in your
true.
corner because your transformation can propel so much further and with so much more velocity if you have the right people in your corner.
Oh, I completely agree. Like that's the same advice I would give. It's like I people who are hesitant about hiring coaches, you know, I think really understand that coaches aren't in it really generally for money. You know, like it's just such a natural thing that we want to do. And yes, obviously we need financial support and just to live and that energy exchange is required, of course. However, it's never because I want your money, unless they're terrible, which you would see. But I think sometimes people might think, oh, it's not worth it. Or, you know, but it really, really is. I've never had a bad experience. Because of course you're gonna sit and you're gonna research who do you gel with, who you align with, does she have a similar story, does he have a similar story? And by the time you contact them, you already know them. You have the conversation, you're like, oh yeah, shoot, this is yeah, great. And it changes, you know, like I've had spirituality coaches, I've had life coaching, I've had um, training as in like workout coaching, everything. So yeah, I think it's so valuable.
And before I ask this next question, because I feel like there's so much more to you and we could spend hours digging into your life, what's another thing that not many people know about you?
Oh, oh. What's another thing that not many people know about me? Wow, I've got a few. Oh, I got one. So we
That you want to
already
share
know
on
I was married.
podcast?
I was married for 7 years. I used to run a nightclub and I did dance at uni. I also used to be a performer on cruise ships. So there you go.
That's very cool.
Yeah, singer.
The
I used
many
to sing.
lives of Emma.
Yeah,
Used to
it was
sing.
great fun. Yeah, I was a singer.
Noted
Yeah,
never to take you to karaoke then.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if I could sing now, but yeah, it was very, very fun. Did it for like 2 years. Loved it.
And so looking back on these seemingly different lives you've had, I mean, I like to look at our lives as a series of different chapters, and I think we all have some that
Mm.
play really important roles in the person we are today. Looking back, it's always easier to connect the dots. Would you say that your life makes a bit more sense looking back now, or what's your view of your chapters and today's story?
Mm. My life. I think I was. I look. I think I was quite lost. I think I was looking, where am I? Where do I thrive? I was constantly looking outside of me for like, where do I not fit in necessarily? I didn't feel like I needed to fit in, but I knew that I was missing something. Like, this isn't. I'm not feeling happiness. I'm not feeling joy. I'm not feeling excitement. And that was something that, like, I am obsessed with self development, as you know, and I know you are as well. Like, we both are obsessed, and I've always been that way. So I was constantly like curious. Like, I couldn't just sit there and be like, okay, well, this is it. Like, better buy a house. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Absolutely not. But I knew that wasn't me. So I knew if I did that, I would never be happy. So then I would just jump and I would bounce and I want to try everything then, because studying isn't for me. Uni's not for me. Managing nightclubs wasn't for me. I'd just hop around and then eventually you figure out, oh, there's a common denominator here and it's me. So
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, "Oh, I'm the problem, it's me."
I'm the problem, it's me. I was like, oh crap. So then that was the moment I was like, oh, because I had a massive breakup a couple of years ago. I was like, why are things not getting better? And then that's when I had that massive moment of like, it's me. It's me. And then just everything just changed. And now I feel like I am actually me now. This is my authentic self, mostly, as much as I can be,
Oh,
which is
I got chills
very
just listening
not
to that.
bad. Yeah, like, I'm very, very calm, very chilled. I have a very slow life. Like, I'm very relaxed. And, if I look back on the person I was then, I was very much a people pleaser. So very, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. And I was never in it. Whereas now, because I'm very mindful and I choose where I want to be, it's extremely fulfilling for me. So
Yeah, it's like you
yeah.
have this inner sense of peace, like, even hearing you talk and being in your presence, you just feel very peaceful, and it's interesting, like, you
Mm,
mentioned you were trying all these things and you're like, "That is not for me." I think it's really easy for people to not want to try things because they're worried about it not working out, or maybe it's not the right thing, but without
mm,
realizing by not doing anything, they're actually making a decision too, like, they're not committing to find out what they want to enjoy
that's
or what makes them happy because they're worried that something won't, and I'm like, "But by doing the things you don't wanna do, like, you know what doesn't work for you." Like, prior to my current role, I
mm,
moved jobs every year, year and a half, and,
yeah, that's
people look
right.
back on
You
that and you're
did.
uh,
Mm,
"Was it the job or was it you?" And I'm like, "100% it was me." I was
yeah.
finding out what I did and didn't like.
That's so you've hit the nail on the head, because it's true. It's like, you have to, you absolutely have to try. And I mean, I'm not even going to say I tried and failed, because it was never, to me, it was never failing. I don't have any
100%.
regrets whatsoever. Zero regrets about anything. I think that's a really pointless way to live for myself. I've just kind of, as soon as it's finished, I'll let it go. Next, let it go. Next, until now, where I'm like, I don't even. Everything in my life is just very organic now, and it's probably, I'm sure you're the same. It's just things that come into my life. If it's not aligned with my values, they're a no. And if they are aligned with my values, it's a yes. It's like podcasts. Yeah, it's aligned with my values. Of course I'm going to do that. And it feels good to do this. Whereas if it wasn't, And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. It would be very inauthentic and weird. And then you'd be like, okay, so that's not for me either. Next, you know? So yeah, you're right. I think you've got to really try things. If you're curious about something, just give it a go. You know, whether you do it for a month
Yeah.
or whether you do it 10 years, it's like you're going to find out eventually.
Yeah, and it's
Mm.
the importance of committing to finding out what's important to you and what you enjoy too. Like otherwise, you're just going to be a passenger living someone else's life. Like you said, you realized buying a house and settling down wasn't going to be working out for you right now. It could in the future, but right now your values don't align with that, and that's completely fine. And it's interesting. Like I'd be curious to understand. You mentioned you don't resonate really with the word failure, and I would say so as well. I'm interested on that same note. I find like a lot of high achievers they
Mm.
go, "I'm not sure if I'll ever really be satisfied." What's your thoughts on that? As someone who's really into personal development, do you think you'll
Mm.
ever feel the feeling of satisfaction? Like hit this point and be like, "I've made it."
Well, I don't think I'll ever get there because if there's yeah, how could you? Like we are constantly evolving. Human beings is just
Mhm.
so fascinating to me, particularly myself. I am obsessed with myself, and I don't mean that in a way of like, you know, like in a weird way. I'm just like this thing is like insane. I it fascinates me, and I will never understand it because for what like last week I was like, oh, I'm on top of myself at the moment. And then 3 days later, it's like, oh, no, there we go. All right, strap in.
Buckle
Like,
up, we're going on a journey.
off, going back. So, like, I'm in one of those at the minute where I'm like, shit, like, I'm very like destabilized by something. But I guess the difference is now I'm understanding, like, the brain is just never, I don't think, oh, is ever going to be achieved. I think you're always going to want more because you're going to get them like, well, if I can get here, I can get, it's an endless game, I think. And I think being okay with that is actually key. And I am okay with that. I'm so okay with that. I'm like, yes, sweet. Like, let's keep going. And I hope I can do that forever. I hope I can feel stimulated cognitively for the rest of my life because I think that is the key to longevity and health. I think as soon as you stop learning and you stop actively feeding your brain and being curious and reading, I honestly think, I bet you there's a correlation with decline in aging and cognitive function when people stop learning.
I would love to find someone to talk to about that further. I would speculate and agree. And it's
Me
interesting.
too.
Yeah. And I love to hear you say that you'll never be satisfied. I think there's two kinds of people. Like, does that mean you'll never be happy? Like, is that what that means? But I also think there's a difference between the pursuit of constant growth, but coming from a place that you're enough as you are and you're just
Mm.
curious about what you can achieve. It's not coming from a place of I'm not enough, I need to be better. It's I just want to
No.
figure out what I'm fucking capable of. There's so
Yeah,
much to explore and I'm here for it. And so I think
that's
there's the 2
exactly right.
distinguishing, like the different attitude towards you approach it.
That's completely right. And I think it's the acceptance of that, yeah, and having that like that hunger just because I think if you're constantly self-developing yourself, you're always at the peak anyway until you learn more. So it's like, well, I'm at capacity. So it's like you already feel like at the top of the game at that point in time until you learn more. And then you're like, oh my God, there's more. So there's not that kind of comparing and there's not that sense of like I'm not adequate because you've invested and you've learned so much already. I think that's the difference potentially because yeah, I think people who are not actively doing that or might not find it natural to self develop might not understand or see that as a failure, which makes sense. Like I get that, but for me, it
Mm.
doesn't. It doesn't. I just feel I feel like it's a constant thing that is it's constantly achieving. It's constant achieving. There's no end to it really.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so how do you maintain good health? And when I say good health, I mean good physical, mental, and emotional health. How do you maintain that while going after growth? Or, I'm guessing that it's not a constant thing, right? Like life is ups and downs, ebbs and flows. It's never going to be constant. And I think we talk about work-life balance, and I don't think ever anything is truly in balance for very
No,
long at all. And so, yeah, how do
no.
you go about your pursuit of good health
Yeah.
while going after your just pursuit to be and do more?
Mm. That's so true, isn't it? It's never always okay. It's like okay for a few weeks, And you're like, this is great. And then something happens. Life is throws the curveballs, doesn't it? And it's like nobody is exempt. So if you're listening to
What
this,
makes it
seriously,
beautiful.
nobody's exempt. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
it's just so well. Um, I think managing health through those ups and downs. I mean, that would be someone who I would potentially work with who's struggling to do that because when they're on top of things, they feel great. I've got my habits, I've got my routine, you know, life's great. I feel amazing. Therefore, everyone around me is going to feel great because I'm great. Everyone's going to benefit from this. However, as soon as something happens or something goes off, they get too busy or an event happens, they kind of fall off and they become very dysregulated internally. And then that translates across all of it. They might start eating differently. Or they're not going to be prioritizing the gym because, you know. So I think for me, when I go through those turbulent times, generally I'll focus more on managing my internal stuff. So trying to stay really regulated in myself is really important, like through breathing, meditating, doing some conditioning work, which I mentioned earlier, just like that controlled conditioning pieces. They really help for me. But still, I will always make sure I move 4 to 5 days a week. Like I'm just at that stage now where that just happens for me. It's not even, do I want to? I'm going. And if I just stretch for half an hour, I'm fine with that during those times. I don't beat myself up about it at all. So I think focusing on, internal world, because when you do that, there's so much more awareness around everything else. So if you can just take away like the guilt of like, not doing stuff or, going through the motions of just trying to deal with life and actually just come into the body for a moment and just think about breathing, it actually gives you a chance to just be in control of your thoughts for a minute. And if you can do that 5 times of the day, one being when you eat your food, one being when you go to the gym, one being when you sit down 10 minutes, if you can just do that 5 times, I think that's phenomenal. If you make 5 conscious choices in your day and you can bring awareness to doing that, that to me is like game changer. You would just flow straight back into your normal routine after that once that cloud had passed. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and you mentioned bringing awareness to yourself, and I think it's really easy, and we touched on this just before, is especially high
Mm,
achievers who are always on the move, they go, "But I'm doing nothing. If I'm sitting down, I'm doing nothing." I'm like, "No, you're actually doing something. By bringing awareness to your thoughts, you're bringing awareness to your thoughts. That's something. If that's how you need to justify doing it in your brain, that's just you're
mm,
doing something."
yeah.
And then I'm also interested, you mentioned that there's routines that people have that can help get them back into a place of good health. And I was talking to a colleague the other day actually about this. And I feel like when you're learning something, you get really attached to rigid structures. And I think that's important because when you're
Mhm,
trying to learn anything new, you need that support and structure. If you need to
mhm.
work out at 9 a.m. every day to make that a consistent
Yeah.
habit, that's great. But I feel like to make something long term and a sustainable habit and something that's truly supportive, you need to include that element of flexibility and adaptability. So you mentioned before that you move, 4 to 5 times a week. I'm sure it's in your head, you know you're going to move. It's just a case of when you're going to move or what sort
Mm,
of movement. You're not
mm,
going, I have to do this particular movement on this day. And that's
mm.
what's making those habits more supportive of you as well. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And uh, um, it's a hard one to crack, isn't it? I think when you're training and kind of, it does take time. I'm not going to lie. I think it took me quite some time to be okay with that because I'd be like, oh, but my body's going to change, or what if I lose the strength in this? And the reality is, you just don't. Not in a week, not in 2 weeks. And if anything, it does the opposite. You actually become stronger and you actually become more present in the gym by just actually stepping back slightly. So generally, I follow a program because, like you said, structure is important. So I've got like 5 days of training that I move through. And if I'm, like 2 of them are upper body, for example, if I'm having a week, like this week, for example, where I've just been a bit kind of all over the place, I'll just remove one of the upper body sessions and I'm just like, yeah, I'm just not going to do that one because as long as I get my legs in, I'm like, I'm sweet. And on those other
Because that's
days,
aligned
I'm
to your
just going
goals,
to,
right? Yeah.
it's a lot. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'm going to do those big muscle groups. They're going to make me feel good because I love doing legs. I love it. And then upper body, I'm like, actually, I'm just going to do some conditioning. And I did like a 20-minute conditioning piece instead, which just made me feel so good. And like the next day, I was just like, gonna feel so much better for that. And like not having the guilt around like not doing the program in the exact order on the exact day, it's just so fine. And that's what I do with my clients because it's like I just meet them where they are right now. They're training twice a week right now. It's like, okay, we're going to train twice a week, but those 2 sessions are going to be just bangers. They're going to be great, like really, really good sessions. And then when they're ready to introduce more, it's like, okay, what do you feel like adding? What are you enjoying about these 2 sessions that we can now capitalize on and put into another day so that we know that you're going to actually enjoy it? And then if they don't feel like doing it, they're very open and honest because we have that relationship. They're very much like, I actually just don't feel like doing that today. Yes, fine. What are you going to do? Are you going to go for a walk? You gonna spend that time sitting? Or are you going to cook yourself a nice meal? What are you going to do? Yeah. So yeah, I think the guilt thing is a big one, isn't it? Especially in the fitness industry. It's like keep like train, like no days off, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, not really though.
We could talk about that should be a whole nother podcast episode. Noted.
Oh,
I'll do that whole guilt, like the media and what it convinces us we need to do. And
it's
so,
ridiculous. It really is. Like, it's just like, and you look at trainers, right? You, me, um, the community that we're involved in, and it's like these guys, yeah, they train, but like only a couple of them are like an athlete level. Everyone else trains 3 to 4 days a week. It's
yep,
normal. We just train really well. We know how to
yep, train really
train.
hard.
That's the difference. Yeah, that's the
Yep.
difference. We just know how to train really smart. And like back to what you were saying before about like most of the guys saying hire a coach, like that is why you hire one because it's like that you literally are getting like gold from that because they know how to train. We know how to train. And it's just a much more effective to me, in my experience. I've been doing it for 12 years. My experience is a much more effective way, like managing how you move through your week, whether it's like a gym program, and following theirs, or whether it's personal training program, or whether it's an online program, something that has that structure around it is great, but give yourself permission to not do it if you don't feel great either.
Yeah. And you've given so many tools throughout this whole podcast that people can pick up and implement straight away. But I'm really interested to hear if someone is looking, what's a really actionable step someone can implement in the next 24 to 48 hours to make one positive step to improving their health?
Unfollow everybody on social media that doesn't make you feel good or makes you feel triggered, makes you feel uncomfortable or jealous. Get them off. Just get rid of them and honestly, that's one of the best things I did. Have people on there that you want to be, have future versions of yourself on your Instagram feed. And that's it. That is something that was huge for me because now on social media, I only see people that really inspire me. And I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah. And hire a coach, obviously.
And hire a coach. And so if someone's sitting here going, I would love to hire a coach and Emma's my coach, where can they find you?
Okay. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is __Emma_Brown. But I am on the 98 training Instagram as well.
Perfect. And I'll pop those details below. But thank you so much, Emma, for your time today and for sharing all these nuggets of wisdom and more about yourself. I enjoyed learning something new too.
Oh, it's so good to talk to you as well.
Pleasure. Awesome. Thanks again, Emma.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Actually You Can podcast. I so enjoy having you here, and I hope you've taken away powerful insights and tools that will support you to achieve your high-level results. Now, before you go apply all of this wisdom in your life, I would be so grateful if you are able to leave us a podcast review on the platform that you're listening to, or share this episode with a friend. Your support means that we can help more self-led, high-performing individuals just like you expand what's possible for them. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on today's episode, so please go on and shoot me a note on socials and let me know what you think. You can find me on Instagram at MiffGalloway. Now, go ahead and make those dreams a reality, because actually, you can.